The 10-gallon aquarium is a very popular option in the fish keeping hobby, so I wanted to share some stocking recommendations for tanks of this size. I currently keep all of these recommendations in my own tanks because I only like to recommend things I have direct experience with. So first up we have Betta Fish, and I know the majority of people watching this will be expecting this to be on this list, but Bettas are so popular for a reason. These fish look absolutely amazing, they're relatively easy to keep in my experience, and they are very entertaining to watch. Betta fish also come in a huge range of colours with different tail and fin shapes, letting you find the perfect betta fish for your tank. Costs can vary widely depending on the specific grade of your betta, but in my area I can find low grade females for around $8 and low grade males for around $13. You can get higher priced show grade bettas from Horizon Aquatics if you are in the UK, and these usually cost around £25 or $30 up to around £60 or $75 depending on the specific colour and tail shape. These are both photographs of Stitch, one of my betta fish, and they were only taken a couple of weeks apart, and as you can see he changed a lot in that time, so keep this in mind if you're buying an expensive betta just for its colour because they can change. Betta splendens, which are the most popular type of betta fish in the hobby, have a wide range for their pH tolerance, water temperature and water hardness, meaning most beginners should easily be able to keep them in their tank. That said, wild type bettas and alien hybrids are becoming increasingly popular in the hobby, and these can have slightly more restrictive water parameters. For example, Betta smaragdina tends to prefer slightly softer water, while Betta mahakiensis tends to prefer slightly harder water. Alien bettas can be problematic as these are a hybrid of different species of betta that have evolved to have different pH levels in their water, so keep this in mind if you are considering an alien betta fish. I know that tank size is a controversial topic when it comes to betta fish, but these can easily thrive in a 10-gallon tank. Unlike 5-gallon tanks where you really should be going for a longer rectangular shaped tank, 10-gallon cubes offer plenty of space for most bettas, so you can go with rectangle or cube tanks. When it comes to stocking, I would recommend you keep your betta fish as the only fish in your tank. They can work in some community tank setups, but it's usually not worth the risk. My two current bettas are fine with both shrimp and snails in their tank, but one of my old betta fish would try to eat all of the shrimp she could find, so keep this in mind as well. Next up we have neon tetras, and I know that some people recommend slightly larger tanks for these, but I honestly do think that these will be fine in a 10-gallon rectangle shaped tank. Unlike something like rummy-nosed tetras that seems to constantly swim the length of their tank, my neons in all of my tanks that I've kept them in just seem to bimble around looking for food. As you can see, my neons are currently in my 40-gallon tank, and even with all of this available space, they still just bimble around at a pretty slow pace, exploring their surroundings. There is one exception to this, and that's during spawning season when the male neon tetras will chase each other for breeding rights with the females, but this doesn't take long to settle down, and once the non-dominant males have retreated away from the females, they should go back to normal. Neon tetras are one of the most popular fish in the hobby, and they are bred in huge numbers, and captive bred neon tetra lines can have issues due to inbreeding. This can result in weaker fish being produced that are more susceptible to disease and genetic issues. I have spoken to experienced people in the hobby that have said captive bred neon tetras from Singapore or the Czech Republic tend to be hardier than those bred in other countries, but I don't know if this is true. Neon tetras do tend to prefer slightly softer water with a temperature range of 70 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 to 25 degrees Celsius, making them very easy to keep. As I mentioned earlier, I would only keep neon tetras in a 10-gallon rectangle tank. I would never keep them in a 10-gallon cube as I just don't think there's enough space in there for the way they behave. When it comes to stocking a 10-gallon rectangle tank with neon tetras, I'd usually stick to the 6 to 8 number. Anything more might create a risk with overstocking, and a lot of people recommend that you keep a minimum of 6 neon tetras in your tank. Next up we have guppies, and I have a love-hate relationship with these. I absolutely love the colour range, the pattern options, the different tail shapes and the way they actually swim around in their tank, but it's been very hard to find stable guppy lines here in the UK. I also have friends in several other countries that report similar issues with the species there, especially with fancy guppies with the strong stronger colours and patterns. I've ordered 3 different batches of fancy guppies from 3 different breeders, and every single one of them has ended up having high fatality rates within the first 3 months. Due to this, I would lean more towards the cheaper mutt guppies that are often easier to find, and they do have less colour, but they tend to be far more hardy. I got my mutt guppies from Pets at Home, which is the big box store here in the UK, and they actually have a higher survival rate than the fancy guppies that I ordered, which were far more expensive from specialist breeders. I have seen people online say that guppies can work in soft water due to their breeding conditions, but my guppies have always seemed to do better in harder water. In my opinion, a couple of decades of being bred in soft water won't overdo thousands of years of evolution in hard water conditions, so I always lean more towards keeping guppies in harder water tanks if possible. I know that I might be sounding negative, but if you can find a hardy guppy line, these really are great fish and they're currently one of my top 3, and I do know a few people who keep these at room temperature tanks without the need for an aquarium heater. With energy prices being as high as they are right now, this could be an important factor for you when considering the fish for your tank. Now you can use a 10-gallon tank for a couple of different guppy tank setups. I keep all male guppy tanks, and I have a dedicated video going over my old setup that I link in the card and description if you want to check it out. If you are keeping all male guppy tanks, and you can keep as many as 10 male guppies in a 10-gallon tank, and I would recommend you keep at least 8 just to help deal with aggression. In my experience, when keeping male only tanks, the more guppies in there the better, and if you keep less guppies then aggression does start to flare up. The other popular option is a breeding tank where you'd keep 1 male with 2 to 4 females and breed the fry out, but guppies are prolific breeders and I really wouldn't recommend this if you are new to the hobby because you need somewhere to put all of the baby guppies. Guppies will swim in all levels of the water column, but they do spend most of their time near the surface of the tank. Due to this, a 10-gallon rectangle tank will usually be the better option over a cube as it offers a larger surface area for more swim space. Next up we have honey gourami, and I love these little guys and I think they're really underrated in the hobby. As you can see, they are predominantly bright yellow and really catch the eye in planted tanks. Try to keep an eye out for this fish on the screen now, as some pet stores will sell these as red honey gourami, but these are actually red robin gourami and they can become aggressive as they get older. Real honey gourami are very peaceful, and I've had 3 of them now and I've never once seen them act aggressive. As you can see in the clips, I keep my honey gourami with tiny little chili rasboras and they never chase them or try to eat them, they just stick to themselves and do their own thing. Just like other gourami species, honeys have the modified ventral fins as well that they use to feel around in their tank, and this can lead to some interesting behaviours as if the 2 honeys in the tank are hugging each other. Honey gourami come from India and they've evolved in fluctuating water parameters due to the annual monsoon season, making them a very hardy fish. If you are new to the fish keeping hobby looking to stock your first 10-gallon tank, I would recommend these as they've been bulletproof for me, but I did lose one because it jumped out of the tank, so try and make sure you either have a lid or you lower your water column. Personally, I've only ever kept my honey gourami in rectangle shaped tanks, but one of my good friends does have 2 in his 8-gallon cube tank and they seem totally fine in there. Unlike many fish in the hobby that can become aggressive with multiple males in the same tank, especially a small tank like a 10-gallon, honey gourami don't seem that bothered. I used to keep 2 male honey gourami in my old 29-gallon tank setup and they were inseparable. They'd follow each other all over the tank, but they were brothers, and I mean biological brothers from the same clutch of eggs, so I'm not sure if that came into play. Honey gourami are usually around the $5 mark and you only need 2 or 3 of them for a 10-gallon tank, so I would consider these a budget-friendly fish as well. Next up we have chili rasboras, and these are another great little fish for 10-gallon tanks. Before I go any further, I just want to quickly say that these guys are tiny little fish and they usually max out at under an inch in length. In my experience, these guys have been very easy to keep, and I honestly do think they're quite beginner friendly, and unlike many other popular fish, my chili rasboras do show up on a regular basis and display something close to schooling behaviour. One potential downside is that it can be a pain to get them to develop the deep red colour that they are known for, but reducing the numbers of non-chili rasbora tank mates in their tank seems to have been the best method for me. I'd guess that they were getting stressed in my old 29-gallon tank because of how many different larger species of fish I used to have in there, but within days of moving them to my 12-gallon tank with my honey gourami, they got this deep red colour. Chili rasboras do tend to prefer softer water, and the official water temperature range is between 67 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 to 28 degrees Celsius. I have kept my chili rasboras at different temperature ranges within that, but in my experience they are definitely more active towards the upper limits of that temperature range. Currently I keep my chili rasboras at 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius, and they do seem to be more active than other setups with colder water. That said, these guys do seem to bumble around their tank looking for food, especially if they're hungry, and they won't be very active, and then all of a sudden they'll just decide to school the length of their tank over and over and over again for half an hour. This is why I'd always recommend rectangle tanks for these guys over a cube. Just because they might not be very active in this clip, it doesn't mean that's their normal behaviour. A 10-gallon rectangle tank should easily be able to house between 10 and 20 of these little guys, but they are unfortunately quite expensive right now due to the recent spike in popularity, so you might be leaning more towards that 10 count. Next up we have cherry shrimp or any other type of Neocaridina shrimp. I know that these aren't fish, but I love my shrimp and I really do think they're underrated in the hobby, and these guys can be entertaining to watch in your tank, especially when you feed them. I recently built out my shrimp rack using 6-gallon tanks, but I have some kind of Neocaridina shrimp in every single one of my aquariums regardless of size now. One of the best things about cherry shrimp or other colours of Neocaridina is that you can use them as tank mates to other fish suggested on this list, because that's what I do, and like I said, it can be hit and miss with your Betta Fish, but my current two are totally fine with a cherry shrimp in their tank. On the flip side of that, you can try and set up some kind of dedicated breeding tank without any fish in there where you just have your shrimp. One of my favourite things about Neocaridina shrimp is the wide colour range that they're available in. These are my cherry shrimp and they are the easiest to find, often the cheapest, and in my experience have been very, very hardy. If you do want to breed your shrimp, then these have been very easy to breed for me as well, and I've bred hundreds of them in my 29-gallon tank without actively trying to breed them. They just get on with it, and then you'll see tiny little baby shrimplets kicking around in the tank. These are my Bloody Mary shrimp and they have a deeper red colour to them, but they can also be more expensive than regular cherry shrimp. I've only had these guys for a couple of weeks, so I can't really comment on how hardy they are or how easy they are to breed, but I think they look great. These are my orange Neocaridina, and I've only had this specific colony for a couple of weeks as well. This is my third orange Neocaridina colony though, because the first two of them failed, so in my experience these guys don't seem to be as hardy as regular cherry shrimp or yellow neos. And that brings me on to my yellow Neocaridina colony, and I honestly think these guys look great, especially on a dark substrate, and they are probably my favourite. I've had this colony for around a year now, although I have recently put them into this tank, and they are very easy to keep and they breed pretty well too. Neocaridina shrimp are also available in white, black, green, brown, dark blue, light blue, and there's also the Rilly pattern, but I currently have no experience with those variants. Unlike fish, shrimp usually care about grazing space in their aquarium rather than swim space, so they'll usually thrive in rectangle or cube tanks without issue. I highly recommend adding moss to your tank, with Java moss, Christmas moss and Taiwan moss all working well in my aquariums. The cost of your shrimp will depend on the grade and colour, but mid-grade cherry shrimp are pretty cheap and easy to find. Neocaridina shrimp have a really low bio load, so you can keep large numbers of them in a 10-gallon tank if needed, but they will breed to the available food supply and prevent overpopulation issues. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. I hope I've been able to help you choose some fish for your new 10-gallon tank. Thanks for watching and have a good day.